teaching artist Sarah Morgan, and today we will be creating our own watercolored pumpkin patch using some visual tricks to make our picture look more realistic. We're going to be learning about shadow and highlight on our pictures. What you'll need for this project is washable markers. They definitely have to be washable. You'll need a little cup of water, a paintbrush, or even Q-tips will work, and a pencil, and pretty thick white paper. Cardstock or watercolor paper works really well, but just as thick as you can find will be just fine. So what we need to do first is draw our pumpkins. Now, I want you to use a pencil to draw your pumpkin shape, but I'm going to be using a Sharpie so that you can see my lines really well. Let's examine our pumpkins that I have brought to show you today and see what we can do to start our pumpkin drawings. I like to start with kind of a C shape on either side. I'm going to do one big pumpkin in the middle, so I'm going to draw one big C shape going that way, and then another C shape going the other way, so it's like a backward C. So I've got my basic pumpkin shape. Now check out, and both of these pumpkins you can see, but especially this one, do you see these lines in the pumpkin? Those are like the ribs of the pumpkin. We're going to draw those too, starting from that middle point again, right here, and I just keep drawing these curved lines, coming out from the middle, going back to the middle on each side, and drawing curved lines instead of straight lines gives it the look of being very round. So what I'm drawing first is what we would call two-dimensional. That means that it has height and length, but it doesn't have the third dimension, which is depth. This pumpkin has depth. It has the height, the length or the width, and the depth. Depth means the space that it takes up going from front to back. Now we can see just a flat piece of paper doesn't really have depth, but we're going to use some visual tricks of shadow and highlight using our color to create that three-dimensional look on our two-dimensional paper. So I'm also going to add the stem. To make a stem, draw a rectangle on top, and then draw a little circle or a little oval on top of that rectangle. And that gives it kind of that rounded look to the stem. You can see that. If you didn't know, pumpkins grow on vines. So you can draw a curly vine coming out and a leaf. When I draw a leaf, I do kind of one curved line coming up one way, and I try to repeat it on the other side. Everybody's leaves are going to look different. That's okay. Draw some lines and some little veins in your leaf. Awesome. So I have one pumpkin drawn, but I want more than one pumpkin, and we can see from these two pumpkins, pumpkins can be all different shapes and sizes. So I'm just going to do a couple more in the background. I'm going to do one that's really tall and skinny like this one. So I'm just making my C curves a little bit taller and skinnier. Just continue to do what we've done so far. It's almost like I'm drawing hearts inside of them too. A rectangle, little circle at the top of my rectangle. Draw my curly vine and a leaf. And one more, because now I want a really short, cute little squatty one. Don't worry if none of your pumpkins look like mine, because I promise it looks like some pumpkin somewhere. Pumpkins come in all shapes and colors and sizes and textures, and that's why they're so fun to draw. Right, so now my pumpkins still look pretty two-dimensional. We can tell they're just flat lines on a paper. We're going to be exploring the highlight and the shadow of our three-dimensional pumpkins to make it look like that on the paper. So you can really see it in this pumpkin, and that's why I love this pumpkin. See these darker colors on kind of these, the dipped in or the pressed in parts of the pumpkin, or what we call the ribs. And these parts that come forward, that are like the little nubby parts of the rib, those are lighter. And we see that really easily in this pumpkin because of the coloring. You can't see it as well in this one, but we're going to be using that to create the optical illusion that our pumpkins are also three-dimensional. So start with any color of marker you'd like. I'm just going to start traditional with an orange. And you're going to take your orange and follow, don't color the whole thing in, do a nice thick line following the lines that you've drawn. So right on the ribs of the pumpkin, or the parts that go in. That's where I'm going to concentrate my color. And I'm turning my marker to the side. I'm not right on the point, I'm on the side of the marker. And that way I get a nice thick line, because I do want enough color to move around, and I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. Remember, don't color it in. You want to leave some white space on your pumpkin. And right now it's going to look a little weird and you're thinking, Miss Morgan, what are you talking about? Promise it's going to work. You're going to love it. We're going to turn our washable markers into watercolors, just using water. That's why they have to be a washable marker. So once you have all of your ribs gone over with your marker color, get a nice amount of water on your brush, and you're just going to drag it over the color you've already done, and you'll start to see that color move. You can kind of brush it in towards the next line if you want, but always leave some white space. Try to leave a white middle in between each one of those ribs of your pumpkin, and go around and do that on all the orange, or whichever color you're using. You are welcome to make very, very colorful pumpkins. You can make each pumpkin a different color, because we've also made it a different shape. And I would love to see a really colorful pumpkin patch. I think that sounds great. So what's happening is, where the shadow is where the pumpkin is dipping in. That means that the light is receding. It's not coming towards our eye, it's going back. So that's the shaded or the darker part of my picture. The part that's lighter, that's coming forward, is reflecting more light. So my eye is seeing that as lighter. And that is what's giving it that three-dimensional, that third dimension of depth look to it. Now obviously, unless I made a sculpture that was three-dimensional, I can't really make a three-dimensional pumpkin like for real on my paper, but I'm using a visual trick to trick my brain into seeing it as more three-dimensional. So once I've got all these colors moved around and I've left a little bit of white space, I'll have the highlight in the middle and the white parts. Oh, and the drips are nice. Let your paper drip. It's really beautiful. But I've got the shadow, the darker parts, where my color is more intense or more saturated. It means I'm seeing more of that color, so it looks deeper and richer to my eye. And let it dry. Once it's dry, I hope you have a lot of colors on your pumpkins and a lot of different shapes. You will definitely want to sign your work, because you are an artist and it's very beautiful. And hang it up. And I hope you enjoyed this project. Bye-bye.